So general questions to the panel, you can either have an open question or address one of the speakers.
Well, this is sort of an open question, I guess. I was curious. I don't recall seeing any real demographic data in any of the presentations. We often get this idea that these mobile devices are being used, especially that there's this kind of demographic bulge that's going to come up that will do nothing but mobile, etc. And I would be very interested in, for iPads in particular, in some demographic data to understand, whether younger users are indeed using iPads for this particular purpose, and also how that might break between these sort of clinical and research-oriented audiences, because I can imagine most of the people I've seen reading our journal on an iPad are old people.
To paraphrase Stuart's question, if it's not traveling to the back, Stuart was interested in geographic and demographic information. So if one of the speakers, I asked, if you are asking a question, use a big, powerful voice if possible. Otherwise, one of the No, I just don't want to leave the rest of the audience out. Or one of the speakers could paraphrase the question. So the question is surrounding are there any demographic data surrounding the use of mobile devices and technology?
For this particular purpose.
I can start. Stuart, we don't have any pure demographic data, but I think you've heard some of John Sachs' research questions and surveys he's done with specific researchers and clinicians. And what he found was that you're right, the iPad tends to go towards us older folks who can read better. But more importantly, what he did say within at least medical was that adoption and usage of mobile devices is prevalent even at the younger and the older age. I mean, it's a part of the workflow. So given that, I think in our industry we're going to see much faster adoption at all ages.
Yeah, I just would like to though
see numbers.
No, I'd like to make the point that I think when we use the term mobile, we always have to distinguish between phone and tablet.
Agreed.
Because some of the data was just like the Mary Meeker data that you showed. It said mobile, it didn't say phone, and that could have included iPad or that could have included tablet, for example. So I think it's a very important distinction to draw, especially for consuming, content in this way, so that we can understand how people really are using these devices.
I was on a panel in Chicago with 4 or 5 MDs. They're an oncologist and hematologist. And what's interesting is the fellows and the researchers and the oncologists they're seeing that the lab coats are now accommodating the iPad. And what I find even more interesting is it's not the mini. That the academicians and the oncologists, the practitioners, like the full screen device.
Next question, yes.
It's obvious from the statistics that Apple is making money on mobile. It's not so obvious what the financial impact is for the content producers. And I wonder if the panel has any perspective on that. I understand Apple charges if there's commerce through their app. So clearly they've got a business model. How does it work for the publisher?
I could go for it. Yeah, I could. So for iTunes apps, which are in the newsstand, when there are mobile transacted subscriptions using your iTunes account, the Apple takes 30% of it. But fundamentally what we see across all of these apps is that's not that important because there's just not that many people buying on mobile. Across 30 different journals, all offering download the issue, buy a full annual subscription. We see precious few of these, iTunes subscriptions. So, by and large, the commercial model remains: pay for an annual subscription, use it whether you receive the print or use the website or use the iPad app, all for the same price. So we haven't seen a significant business model change. At some point, with a good website, a mobile adapted with high penetration of smartphones, with both apps and mobile, at some point, this is going to have an impact on print, right? At what point does the society or the publisher decide that distributing print is, a situation? So if you have a whole lot of print advertising, that's going to take a while. But we have seen a couple of situations where we've had 3 different societies decide that because we now have the app and the website, that this particular research-focused journal may not want to distribute print anymore. It may have been coming anyway, but for some people that are on the edge, it's.
Jeff, you mentioned in your talk that the ACS moved from an app model where you charged for it to a free model. Do you know any background on the history and the rationale of changing that model?
Yeah, that was exactly the process we went through. Was we saw this very much as an experiment when we put it out there, and we started charging, and we realized that charging didn't, we couldn't bring in enough revenue to even cover the costs really of the development of the app and the ongoing upkeep of the app. So at that point, what was the purpose of charging for the app? We might as well make it available and focus more on making our content more easily accessible. So that was exactly the conclusion that we reached.
Yes, in the front.
If I can make one comment on that. I mentioned that we have the largest print circulation in all of oncology, and that our app is free as well as our web. That said, that mobile is now greater, and we're talking about iPad here, so I should say iPad applications is greater than 50% of the overall revenue for the oncologist now. So there's an awful lot to be said for the interactive ads that are inside the iPad.
Does Apple take a piece of?
No, because mine is free.
Right. In the front here.
They would take 30%.
So you, sir, and then I'm keeping you in my mind, Stuart. I want to give a, so 1, 2, and was there one behind? Yes, Bernie.
Right, so a couple of quick questions. One for Elsevier specifically. You mentioned the much higher usage rate for the journal branded apps that you had. How are these different from the one that is more generic, or the other app that has many more publications? Are they different only in the fact that they only have one journal, or is it that they're also different in customization?
Yeah, the whole functionality is different. So Science Direct is designed around, use this app to perform a search, bring back articles. So it's a discovery app, if you would, where you can discover, you can go to the TOC and navigate your way down and find articles, but it's primarily was put out there as a way of searching and/or browsing what you've paid for, whereas the journal branded apps are clearly more magazine oriented. The issue downloads in the background through Newsstand. You go in there and you swipe through. They're designed for the person intending to read the whole article cover to cover. So you see a lot. You see a lot of page. Yeah, well, it's a little more than that, but yeah, that's the basic navigation is download the issue.
It's more actual reading versus.
Yeah, browsing. Yeah.
Okay, and generally for everyone, what do you think is the next sort of big sort of development in terms of app development? Like, are you still thinking of having the Android separate from the iOS, or bringing all that back to the browser with like HTML5 or whatever other technology? I mean, obviously the customization part of it is very important, but have you found that you're able to do that without having to develop different apps for different platforms?
Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you want to take that?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, well, we are launching an HTML5 fully compliant mobile browser experience, but we don't expect that would result in an immediate removal of the app. I think the app has a purpose for. It's a very elegant, user experience. Mobile web is still a little choppy, where you're sort of waiting for the pages to turn and things like that. So we think it's going to be that decision is going to be 2 years from now, probably.
Right, in the front, please.
I think you had mentioned that you're going to have heavy app usage for your personal subscriptions. But what about institutional sort of licensed audience segment? Are they using the apps as much? Or are they going to the mobile website instead? What is the breakdown for that? And also, do you have different approaches to marketing or outreach for these two different audiences, or is it the same? And what is your sense of that?
Panelists, when you respond, just if you could just mention a little bit or the part of the question that you're going to be responding to.
Do you want to take
I can start. So we had the question about is there a breakdown between the institutional use versus the personal use of our apps? And we specifically designed our app to not have to worry about that issue. So actually, we're not tracking directly which of ours are being used by institutional versus personal subscriptions. Since we focused on our abstracts, and our abstracts are freely available for anyone, we focused on a tool that would help people find the articles they were interested in, save them, and then come back and access the full text later in whichever way they normally would. But I still think that just comparing that to our demographics, the vast majority of our use is through institutional access.
Other parts from the panel from those? That was a very large and complicated, not complicated, complex question. So any other parts panelists would like to take?
We did the same in terms of the design of the app, basically make it available and usability for both sets of audiences. Obviously, with the mobile key, institutional access is going to be very seamless and free, but we haven't really seen that much of a difference in terms of session or the way the usage is done per the institutional versus the individual at this point, but we're keeping an eye on it.
Bernie.
Quick question. Marty, surrounding the revenue that you spoke about with the app, are you specifically talking about ad revenue?
Yeah. And no, we don't have any subscription revenue, no membership, no cost for the journal for the end users. So it's all ad revenue, interactive ads.
I know you want to ask a question, but I want to get no. It's okay. Yes, and sorry. Yes, and then yes, in the background. You know who I'm saying yes to.
A follow-up question.
And no. Sorry.
Follow-up question, Marty, about the ads. I think a lot of people are trying to balance the increased metrics and analytics that you have in the digital space, but how are you navigating kind of sunshine restrictions around where you're displaying those ads and kind of maximizing the value of the demographics with restrictions and what you can and can't do around full text?
Yeah, you bring up a very important and challenging conundrum. We do it. We serve the ads based on keyword blocking, if you will. So we look for keywords, words that are in the article, then you can't serve a particular ad. Then there's also an algorithm. So yeah, because the Sunshine Act can make it definitely challenging, but since we're 100% supported by ads, it's important that we get them in there. And then there's no CME anywhere near the ads, of course.
Yes.
Just a moment ago, one of the speakers, I can't see behind the column here, said something about mobile key for institutional access. Could you please elaborate on that? I was going to ask to all the panelists, what are you doing about access for institutional subscription of individuals away from their institutions?
Yeah, at Highwire, we allow a mobile key to be downloaded, which will tie to the institutional IP that they have registered within a particular journal. So the mobile user would also have the same kind of access they would on desktop and within the institutional IP framework.
In the back, yes. Mm-hmm. If possible, would you be able to stand up? Would that be okay? Thank you.
American Psychological Association, and it's on the institutional access topic. We also put out our approach for institutional users to register email address and get connected through mobile. We found rather long uptake of that option when we went back to find out how many people had actually done it. What have the panelists found?
Well, I could say I'm not the Science Track product manager, but so what I was informed was that they do have sort of a pairing mechanism like that, but also found the same thing, low uptake. It may have had to do with, how do you reach all those individual people at the institution more so than the mechanism itself. So.
Okay, other questions? Yes.
One more. Should
I'm sorry.
Just add to that?
Sorry.
So we're on the Adapon platform, and they have a mobile feature that we are currently experimenting with. So we don't yet have an answer, but we're asking the same questions and playing around.
In the turquoise.
Hi, Danielle Resch from Wiley. I guess this is for everybody on the panel. How are you all solving the problem of offline advertising and usage of those?
So The ads are downloaded locally. Everything else is, any other videos will be streamed in through Rightcove, but any of our ads that have a video component or any type of interactivity is downloaded locally behind the scenes. And we have to deal with a certain regulations from Apple that only 25 megabytes at a time can be downloaded behind the scenes, sort of unbeknownst to the user. But now when the physician is offline, let's say they're in a radiology clinic and there'll be no connectivity there, when they next connect to 3G, 4G, or Wi-Fi, that data comes back to our server.
We're doing it the same way at elsewhere.
Same.
Other questions? Our panelists will remain here. No use keeping you here and being bored. Get out, get a little bit of air, and then have lunch. Thank you very much for this session. Thank you to the panelists.